Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. Alright, so Roadside Picnic is a Russian post-apocalyptic novel written in 1972 by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. And it has oddly become one of the most influential genre novels ever written, especially for fans of gaming. The novel, of course, inspired the film Stalker in 1979 from Andrei Tarkovsky, and both of those in turn inspired the video game Stalker: Shadows of Chernobyl. The Roadside Picnic, the original novel, also inspired the Metro series of novels, which in turn inspired the Metro series of video games. And Roadside Picnic also inspired the game we are looking at today, and that is Zona, the Secret of Chernobyl. So this idea of this kind of like a Russian idea, this European or Eastern European idea of the apocalypse is very different than the one that we all, or many of us, grew up being into in the 80s in America and in Australia with Mad Max, which was all about like cars and fast-paced and like brutal action. The idea in Roadside Picnic, and then of course in Stalker and Metro, is a little weirder. It's slower paced. The focus is more on survival. And that is really what this game is about. So the original novel, the novel Roadside Picnic, it's about stalkers who are going into zones to look for gear and to look for things to survive. And they go out on expeditions and they come back and they're slowly trying to rebuild these little pockets of civilization. And it really is a fantastic novel, and it's one of my favorite novels of all time. And it's weird how oddly influential it's been, but not a lot of people read it anymore. So if you're looking, if this game looks interesting, or if any of those other games I mentioned sound interesting and you have not yet read Roadside Picnic, I highly recommend you do so. But anyway, so this is Zona. Zona is a adventure game, and it is made by a Polish company. And I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the Polish names of the designers. I'm very sorry, but if you look here, you can see the credits. I have a terrible time with pronouncing Polish names, and I am very sorry about that. But Zona is an adventure game with a focus on survival. And I think what it does best of all is it creates a very tangible sense of danger in the world. There have been multiple turns that I've been playing where I know what I have to do, but I don't want to do it because I'm afraid of what's going to happen to my characters. Now, one thing this game is not is it is not really co-op. It is a competitive game. And what you're trying to do is as a survivor here. So I'm playing with two survivors. I'm playing with a mystic, and I am playing with a prospector. And they will be represented by minis on the board here. And so the survivors, they enter the Zona, in one of the areas, and what they're trying to do is get to these four secret locations: the Botanical Lab, the Emission Observatory, the Underground Archive, and the Government Bunker. They're trying to break into these facilities, discover secrets within, and then using those secrets, they want to infiltrate through Chernobyl into the sarcophagus at the power plant where the nuclear meltdown happened, to get to the ultimate goal is like discovering like what is really happening in this world. And while you're doing that, you're going to be traveling throughout the world, represented by these different spaces here. And this board is double-sided for a 1 or 2 player game to a 4 player game. And you are going to be facing off against certain kinds of mutants, which are going to be represented by this symbol here, and anomalies, which is going to be represented by this symbol here. Mutants, you usually have to fight using strength. Anomalies, you usually have to puzzle out using smarts, I believe. I forgot the names of the... So the characters have 4 different stats: alertness, physique, smarts, and willpower. And so you're going to be traveling around, having encounters with anomalies and with mutants and weird creatures. And then you're also going to be, at the end of every turn, you're going to be having an event. And the events are either yellow if you're in one of the yellow regions, or they will be drawn from the green deck if you're in one of the green regions, or if you are in one of the secret locations, you will draw one of the secret location decks. And finally, if you have discovered 2 secrets, or 1 secret from 2 different secret locations, you can make your way through the red zone into the sarcophagus. And once you're in the sarcophagus, you have to pass 1 final event, and the first player to do that wins the game. So there really is no co-op variant. This is not a threat management style game like Pandemic. It kind of bucks the trends of most adventure games these days seeming to be co-op in nature. This is very much competitive, and it does have a take that element, because there is a thing called the voice of Zona, and that is the first player of each round, and the first player token rotates. It's going to be at the end of the round, is going to be drawing one of these rumor cards, and these are kind of add danger to the board. But a lot of times these rumor cards are going to give the voice of Zona, the first player, a choice of where to put the bad stuff. And so there is that competitive nature comes through, and so I really think this game is best played as a competitive game, because it loses that edge when you're just playing solo, as I am doing with a couple characters. Another thing this rumor deck is going to be controlling is this emissions counter, and that is a track up here. And the track starts at 0 and it works its way down, and if it ever reaches this point, what happens is the sarcophagus, the point, the ground zero for the apocalyptic nature of this world, flashes a wave of radiation. It's called an emission throughout the land. And when that happens, it is very, very bad for the explorers who have not found shelter. And there are a few places that you can take shelter on your turn. You can take shelter in a roadhouse, you can take shelter in the village, you can take shelter in the research station, or if you are in one of the secret locations. Those are indoor locations, and they are safe from the emission wave, the wave of radiation that rolls out as the time ticks down in this game. And when that happens, you take this deck of emission cards and you flip the top one over. And this is where it becomes very deadly. Green zones, yellow zones, red zones. If you are in a green zone, you take all of this kind of damage. If you are in a yellow zone, you take all of the green damage and the yellow damage. And if you are in a red zone, you take all of the damage. Additionally, this tells you what kind of creatures and anomalies are going to be spawning and where they're going to spawn. So as this wave of radiation emanates across the land, it's mutating creatures and causing weird anomalies to show up that the players are going to have to deal with. And that's what really neat. It is a timing mechanism, and I sometimes don't like timers in games, but I feel like this one is is very thematic, and so I think it works. And let me just show you the reason why that emission damage can be so dangerous is because you don't have a lot of health in this game. Each character has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots that they can fill up with damage, and there are 3 different kinds of damage. There is radiation damage, mental damage, and physical damage. It is all represented by the same damage tokens. However, certain items you have will protect against certain kinds of damage. So for instance, my prospector character, she actually went into the underground archive here as a secret location, and there she found a hazmat suit. Now this hazmat suit can protect, when you use it, it can protect against 1 physical damage, 1 radiation damage, and 1 mental damage. And every time you use it, you add a damage marker to the suit. And by doing that, you can protect against all of the damage listed. This suit can only be used 3 times though before it has to be discarded. So not only is the land dangerous in this game, but your equipment that you're finding, of course, you're scavenging for this equipment, so it's very fragile, and things are always on the verge of breaking. Most items can only be used a couple times before they break. This item is a spectrometer. It can be used when passing a smarts test. It gives you 1 success and allows you to ignore 1 negative. So there are different decks of items. You have junk items here, which these are typically, not quite as good things. You have an oxygen, they're not bad. Boots, some different kinds of suits, binoculars, stamps, chocolate, nuts and bolts. So different kind of junk that you might find scattered about. Then you have a deck of somewhat better items. And these are just called items, I believe, or equipment. And these are where most of your weapons and your military grade outfits are. Armor and different kind of stems and health packs, grenades and guns and that kind of thing. And then throughout the adventure, you can also locate different artifacts. And these artifacts come in 2 different decks here. You have a yellow artifact and a green artifact. And these are kind of more like mystical things that you can find that can help you. And a lot of times though, these will also hurt you if you have too many of them on you. Now one thing this game doesn't have is it doesn't have a lot of flavor text, and I wish it had more because this is just a gunk. It protects against 3 radiation damage. You can use it 1 time. But what is gunk? Or this as a sponge, a sparkler, a flesh whip. I just wish there was a little more, even just 1 or 2 little sentences of description to kind of flush out the lore of the world, because I do think it's interesting. I think that it does feel lacking in this game. Even like the kind of creatures you're going to be fighting, you really don't have any kind of description. So even like a little book that you could look things up in would be kind of cool, I think. Then another really nice thing about the game is that there's a space on the board for just about every deck of cards. It comes with a tray for your anomalies and your mutants. It comes with a nice cardboard board here for your items for the marketplace. The characters come with a backpack that you can store your gear in. This spot here is to keep track of your reputation. Your reputation can go up and down throughout the game, and it's very important to monitor that because a lot of the effects of the events and different spaces on the board will rely upon your reputation of being neutral, good, or bad. And then your character here will have their stats, their special ability, and then I just keep, you keep your damage here, keep your money there. You have a slot for small items, pouch items. Your backpack has 5 items. Some items can give you an additional spot, and then here you have your gear that you can wear. So there's a lot going on. It's a very difficult game. Not to play. It's actually a very easy game to learn, but the game itself is just really deadly. And I've played, this is my halfway through my second game, and I'm constantly feeling like I'm on the verge of dying, or like one turn away from either my character dying or their gear just getting completely destroyed in the process. And so, like I was saying at the beginning, like every turn I'm like, okay, I know what I need to do. I need to come in here, but I'm really worried about facing off against this guy, or I'm really worried, right now the emissions tracker is just about ready to explode. So I need to make sure that I end this turn inside one of the indoor locations or next to it, because when the emission explodes, you also have a thing called fatigue. And this is kind of, you can exert yourself to do extra things. But when an emission phase comes and you're not indoors, you can exert yourself for 2 to move into a location, an indoor location, if you are adjacent to it. So you do need to keep an eye on that timer. That's why I like it in this game, because it's not just a timer. These decks of cards, if this rumor deck ever runs out, the game is over. But this emissions timer, you have to pay attention to, because it really depends on where you are on the map when that thing pops off. You're going to have a bad time if you don't pay attention to it. Another thing that's pretty cool about this game are the events themselves. So I'm going to show you 2 examples. Now there are 25 of each of the green decks and the yellow decks, and each one of those has 3 different entries depending on where you are. So if you're in the deep forest, the factory, the junkyard, the White Lake, if you're in Chernobyl, or another location. So if you have 25 times 3, each one of these is kind of like a deck of 75 different random events. So that's cool. And I think the events are pretty interesting. They're not all bad. Most of them are. Some of them will have you pass a test. And to pass the test, it's very simple rules, really. So this is a mental test, and I need 3 successes. If my mystic, I'm just going to dump his stuff off. If my mystic was taking that test, he has a mental of 2, which means he needs one more success. So you add whatever your stat is, and you roll these D6 here. I really like these D6. I like they're not shiny. They have this kind of like matte finish. Very nice dice, actually. And you always roll 3. These are +1 success. These are -1 success. These are that kind of like danger symbols. If you ever roll 2 of them, 2 or 3 actually, you will take a point of radiation damage. So if I had drawn this card and I was in Chernobyl as the mystic, I would read this. A small girl in a tattered dress is standing on top of a debris heap, her skin covered in fur. She looks at you with pitch black eyes, making you feel uneasy. Take a mental 3 test. So roll that. All right, so I would roll 2. So I would take a point of radiation damage. Now I could use the last use of my scavenger suit to ignore that radiation damage, or I could just take it. I got +1, so my mental is 2, +1 is 3, so I passed that test. So you blink and snap out of it. The girl is gone. All you find is a dirty teddy bear. It's holding something. Gain 2 junk items. So then I would draw 2 random junk items, and I would find an energy drink, which would allow me to add +1 to a physical or a smarts check, and I found a crowbar. Now the crowbar is a really useful item. This comes into play in various events that'll say, like, if you find $100 in this closet or safe or something, if you have the crowbar, you manage to break open another wall and find an extra 100. So there's a lot of instances where the crowbar becomes a very useful tool to your adventurer or your survivor. The yellow events in the yellow deck are usually a little more dangerous, but you also have, sometimes you will have an event like this where you get to make a choice. So a group of scientists gathers at the edge of the lake. Their leader, Professor Kurlievich, asks for your help exploring an underwater anomaly. Gain a yellow artifact, and then you can choose to do this or this. Then you also have the green events. And now the events in the secret locations. This is where I don't feel there's quite enough. There's only 10 in each location. I would have liked to have seen at least probably like 5 more per deck. However, these are more complex, so these will often have a series of challenges that you have to solve. You have to overcome these tests in order to find this secret. And also with the sarcophagus, I believe there are 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are 14 sarcophagus cards. And these are even more complex events, a series of events that you will have to go through, often giving you a choice, depending on how you've upgraded your character with your stats and with your gear and that kind of thing. But yeah, so that's it. That's a game. You're moving around. You're encountering spaces. Each of the spaces has something you can do. You are encountering mutants and anomalies. You're trying to get into these secret locations to unlock them. Each secret location has a certain lock that will be randomly determined at the beginning of the game, something you have to do. So, to get past this lock, you have to discard a yellow mutant trophy and lose a little bit of reputation. It's very easy to lose reputation in this game and very difficult to gain it. But overall, I do like this game. It's a really great game for slow questing because the turns are super quick and there's absolutely no upkeep in between turns. There's nothing really to forget if you've done or not. I do wish there was a little more to it in terms of it being a solo game. I wish there was just something a little more to do than just to play the base game. If they could come up with like a little small card expansion or something that would make the solo or co-op experience feel not quite like a lesser version of the actual game, that would be fantastic. And I believe the designers could do that pretty easily. But overall, I recommend this game. The rule book is pretty well written. I didn't have any trouble. Like I said, the game itself, learning the game is pretty easy. Some of the items are a little complex with the iconography. But overall, this is a quality game. The components are great. The art is fantastic. I do wish that there was more flavor text involved in some of the cards, just to immerse yourself in the world a little more, to give some background. It feels like it's a little abstract, and like a lot of the stuff is just pictures, so you don't really know, like, well, yeah, that's a shell, but like, what the hell is that shell? Or this kind of like petrified wood or timber, or this thing called brilliance. I want to know more about these items and more about this world, and I think that would help me like this game even more than I do. It's a very decent game. It kind of has seemed to have flown under the radar. I was not aware of it until one of the viewers, Eric Peterson, I forgot your last name, sorry, but he asked me about it and I had never even heard of it. So I don't know if it was on Kickstarter or if it was just released. I'm not sure, but I picked it up on Amazon and I am happy that I did, and I am looking forward to playing this when my game group can get back together. The turns are short. The game is simple to teach and learn. The game you're playing, it's difficult. There are some difficult decisions. You really feel like you are surviving or trying to survive in a dangerous world. And so in that sense, I think the game is a great success in how it has implemented its theme. And I should mention, one of the reasons why I started off with that talk about Roadside Picnic is the way you determine who the first player is a player who last went on a roadside picnic receives the Voice of Zona token. So that's how you can tell that Roadside Picnic was a inspiration for this game going into the Zona. However, this game, it really is no Roadside Picnic. You will have to fight and scrape your way for every single success. And that's it. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We will talk to you later. Bye bye.